Welcome to the Growing Tall Poppies podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nat Green, and I'm so excited to have you join me as we discuss what it means to navigate your way through post-traumatic growth and not just survive, but to thrive after trauma. Through our podcast, we will explore ways for you to create a life filled with greater purpose, self-awareness, and a deep inner peace. Through integrating the many years of knowledge and professional experience, as well as the wisdom of those who have experienced trauma firsthand, we will combine psychology, accelerated approaches, coaching, and personal experience to assist you to learn, to grow, and to thrive. I hope to empower you to create deeper awareness and understanding and stronger connections with yourself and with others, whilst also paving the way for those who have experienced trauma and adversity to reduce their suffering and become the very best versions of themselves in order to thrive. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I'm super excited today to bring you our next guest on the Growing Tall Poppies podcast. It's my absolute pleasure and privilege to welcome a wonderful lady who I've only just met. However, I'm so excited to have you also get to meet her today, as she has faced considerable adversity and some very traumatic experiences, and is a wonderful example of a tall poppy constantly shining her light brightly despite everything and making a difference in the lives of so many. She's so generously offered to share her experiences and her many words of wisdom with us today. So let me introduce Colleen Daniels to you all. Welcome, Colleen. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Natalie. What a lovely introduction. I hope I'm worthy of it. I guess I could tell people a little about me or what I'm doing today, I guess. People tell me that I'm an advocate for other people. I have multiple sclerosis. I was diagnosed back in 1998. And today, I guess what I do is try to help those people, other people, of course, with MS. And that's where the traumatic times in my life have led me. So it's a path we're on and we travel it. And this is kind of where it's led me today, is to help others who are facing the condition that I face. That's about it, really. That's kind of what I do.
Summed it up in a nutshell so beautifully. And I know we got a chance to have a chat the other week, and you were just such an inspiration considering what you've lived with for so long. Like 1998 is a long time to be living with such a significant chronic health condition. And I know that you're going to share the journey that you've taken with us, because I know that in itself, as you'll share, you're only talking about your journey and the impact it's had on you. That's all you can talk about. But it's also being paid forward so beautifully to so many people. Maybe we'll get you to start with, telling me a little bit about 1998, how things were prior to that, so we get a feel for what changed for you once you got that diagnosis.
Okay, yeah. Well, I guess I was a young woman. I was single at the time. I had just become single. Anyway, have relationships and things go wrong. I was a single mum. I had 3 young children, but I was working full time. Life was good. I was happy, I felt like I was in the right place for me. And I had a full-time job. I was working, raising 3 children, doing all the things that young mums do. And the MS, multiple sclerosis, it's a disease. It's kind of sneaky, and you don't know. Well, it can sort of hide from you, and you don't know you've got it. So for me, anyway, in my situation that I can speak of, I had little things that I just ignored. Like my hand would feel a bit numb, but it would go away. And then it was like, oh, that was a bit weird, but you just forget about those little things. I was extra tired, but I was a young mum, young-ish, I was 40. I just accepted it as being normal.
Mm.
Things like that were happening. And then what happened? This all of a sudden, this Saturday morning, I woke up and couldn't walk properly. It's like my
Gosh.
legs were just not responding the way they should. So everything was just difficult, and I was sort of hanging on to the walls and the furniture just to get to the bath. And so that was really weird, but it faded away after a few days. Like by the end, that was a Saturday morning. By the Tuesday, I was back at work with a limp, but I was back at work. So again, it was just like that was really weird. What was that? But thought it was my body telling me to slow down. I was
Mm.
doing so. That was my reasoning to myself,
Yeah, absolutely.
because everything was normal. Why should I expect anything strange
Hmm.
in my family history of anything strange that I might be looking out for? So, long story short, it happened again, and I went to the doctor.
Okay.
Yes, and then a few other things, and eventually was sent to a neurologist. They thought it might be a virus to start with, and all that. Anyway, neurologist, an MRI, they find lesions on your brain, on for me anyway.
Mm.
I only had one, and they said, well, it's
Okay.
hardly multiple, but it looks like a very early stage of MS with your symptoms and all
Hmm.
that sort of thing. So, yeah, so that's where it started. And, and that's hard. That's traumatic in itself, because suddenly your life isn't what you thought it was. Your future is taken away, isn't it?
And I totally get what you've just said, Colleen, that we have this ideal of how life's going to be. You were already living a life a little differently to what you expected, being a single mum, working full time, raising three kids, already thinking it's normal to feel exhausted because you had so much going on. But the plan or the trajectory, if you want to call it that, that you would have had in your mind for you suddenly was going to change very much with the diagnosis of MS. So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. It's kind of hard, I suppose, to explain, but I think we all kind of have a plan, like we're working towards. We've got dreams, you know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
the, like we sort of think, well, one day I'm going to do this. And for me, my dream was to travel overseas. And you think you're never going to be able to afford it. And then you've got kids, and so you've got to wait a while and
Yeah.
all of those things. So you've got all these things kind of on your back burner, or you might want to study something that you never got to do, or just things like that. You do have these sort of unformed plans in your mind, and you're always
Yes.
working toward them. Like you might be saving a little bit, thinking one day that'll build up, and all those little things. So, but suddenly you're told you have an incurable disease that's going to disable you. And that was what I was thrown. And
Mm.
so that's really difficult. And so you from knowing who you are and what you're about, you don't know anything. It's like, what do I do now? So
Mm.
that was how it was for me anyway. Um, so yeah, difficult.
So let's go back because I know it, quite a while ago, 1998, and so much has happened for you since then. But you've got this disease or illness that it's been diagnosed, and you know already that yes, it's degenerative, it's going to progress, and you're facing a different life to what you'd planned. What do you think, if you can recall, what were the key emotions or challenges that you faced with that initial diagnosis?
It's just the challenge of just not knowing what to do and trying to find, always searching for something,
Mm.
something. There's got to be something. And I think for multiple sclerosis, they don't even know what causes it. So that's a real challenge in your mind. It's like, well, how
Mm.
on earth are they ever going to fix it? They don't even know how it starts. Nobody knows what causes it, where that little first thing, like for most diseases, it'll be a bacteria, a bug, a virus, and that'll start something. But they can't find it with MS. They suspect some things, but they can't find it, and they haven't proven anything yet.
Mm.
Still,
So that uncertainty, and I guess at the time wanting to know
oh
what you could do about it, but almost not much hope for a cure back then.
No, and one of the things they tell you when you're diagnosed is that the medication they have is supposed to slow it down. Now, this is just my opinion, and my opinion at the time. It has changed a bit now. But at the time, I thought, well, if they don't know how it starts, how do they know how to slow it down? Like, it just didn't make any sense. And I was given like about 4 brochures on different medication. They were all injectable. You'd have this needle and you'd have to inject yourself, which was not fun to think about or to do. And I had all this information about those, so I had to just pick one. That was like, go back home, read these brochures and come back and tell us which one you'd like to try. And none of them said they were any more than 30% effective. The effectiveness was based on the number of relapses, so episodes of different things that you might have.
Wow.
So they say they slowed down the episodes. And none of that, I thought, how do they know that when it's so unpredictable? How can they measure that? So I was just very doubtful. And this is silly, but at the time I told myself, it doesn't make any sense to me and I don't want to do it. So I'm not doing it. I didn't.
And thankfully, you have an inquisitive mind,
I
and
guess
you
so.
weren't willing to just accept what was shoved in front of you and accept that was a given. So I know that you then had a long path to the journey you eventually chose to take. So tell us a
Yes.
little more about that, because it's fascinating.
I guess we're always looking, and you see it on the news. We have the internet now, always telling us little bits of news and that, oh, they think they've found this new cure or something, but it's always just something new to look at. It doesn't mean they found it, but there's always these things. Anyway, so this sort of happens all the time, and we all get a bit, oh, another one.
Yeah.
But I did see, and on television there was an episode, a show, a news type show, about a lady who'd been overseas to have a procedure, and it was a chemotherapy procedure. And she was doing really well, and this was for her MS, of course. And she'd been overseas to do this. It involved chemotherapy. They showed before and after, and I thought, well, gee, she's doing better, a lot better. And so that was kind of the first thing. And then, I don't know, you just sort of, that was it. But I wasn't going to do anything about it because, I was very doubtful of everything. I thought, oh, yeah, sure. Then I just saw more little bits about other people who'd done the same thing, and you see it online and little bits in a newspaper or an article in a magazine, things like that. And they just seem to be popping up a lot. Probably because the internet and everything follows around, doesn't it? But, so it knows what I'm interested in. But it was happening. And so I started to look into it myself. And I found groups online, and I found out that this procedure was called HSCT, and it's called, I can't pronounce it, it's hematopoietic, something like stem cell transplant. That's what it's called.
Okay.
HSCT. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff about that online. And I just joined different groups, chat type groups, and spoke to people. Anyway, and then I was researching as well. Like, I don't just take what people say. I'm looking at studies and that they've done on it. So this sounds genuine. And people do, like, I could see that it didn't work for everybody. There were certainly stories that weren't so great, but the larger percentage seemed to be pretty good. And so, long story short, after researching it, and I started to speak to my husband about it, say, look, what do you think about this? And he was a bit, questioning of it, as well as you would be. And of course, I'd have to go overseas to do it. Anyway, they do have trials here in Australia, but I did try to get into those. That was my first, actually, I should say that. My first attempt was to try to get into a trial, because that would be much cheaper, of course, and much easier on the family and everything. But no, I didn't meet the criteria for that. Anyway, I was definitely looking overseas, and what would be the best place, the safest place to do it. And looking at them all, for me, it was Russia and the reason I chose Russia, because over there it was a university hospital, so they had every specialist available. They had all the experts, and I thought, well, this is good. That's a good, so I thought, and you stayed in hospital the whole time. You weren't leaving the hospital at all. Whereas other places you had to stay outside the hospital. And I don't know, I just like to have, if I needed somebody, I wanted them there. I didn't want to have to wait for them. After some time, he did agree, because everything that I found, I would flick off to him, email it to him. I said, have a read of this. Then after a while, he started to say, yeah, that does sound all right.
So let's go back a little bit. So you were a single mum with three kids.
Oh, yes.
And then, yeah, no, that's fine. Then,
That's
and
another
I think
story.
because it's just how your life is now, that
Yes.
that your beautiful husband is part of that. We missed that little bit of the story, that you were managing everything, you got the diagnosis, and then somewhere in there, this beautiful man came into your life.
He did. And that's, oh gosh, I was 51, I think, at the time. Yes. And it was a New Year's Eve. I was at home, an ad came on TV for some dating website, and I sort of, ignored it. And no, before New Year's Eve. And then on New Year's Eve, the ad came on again. And I thought, because I'm sitting home, I was thinking about going out. I thought, I'm going to go out. Right. And I got up and got dressed. I was about to go out. And I thought, what am I going to do? I was just going to the what am I going to do when I get there? Everyone's going to be there with other people. I'm going to be there on my own, that's not too great. And and I had picked up the phone to call a taxi. And I thought, nah. I put the phone down, went and put my pajamas on, stayed home. But then that ad came on again. This is how it worked.
That's a
And,
sign.
and I thought, yeah, well. And I thought, so I put this ad up, but I said, I'm not looking for a relationship. I just like someone. If I want to go to a movie or to a concert, I'd like to have someone to go with. And I saw my now husband's profile, and I thought, because he was an ex-federal policeman, and I thought, yeah, sure. I thought it was all lies. And then I don't know what happened. I think I said hello to a couple of chaps, and one came back and said not interested. I'm not sure. I think my husband contacted me, and I thought, oh, okay, you're the one that I thought sounded like a big fibber, but we'll see. And so basically from there we chatted just online for a little while and forth, and then we had a few phone calls, and the conversations went on for hours. And we got to the point, my husband said, well, do you want to go out? And I thought, well, yeah, I'll meet you, because I was very safe. I'll meet you at this restaurant. Anyway, that all went wrong, because it was like 40-something degrees that day. And I don't drive. So anyway, so I ended up calling him saying, where are you? And nearly here. So he came and picked me up anyway and put me to the, but and so we talked and talked and talked, the pages to get served, because we wouldn't shut up long enough for them to order. And anyway, so that all went very quickly. So we just met. We met online, and then it moved on to, we had a date. And honestly, it was about 1 week later, he asked me to marry him. And I said yes.
Oh,
and
how
here we
wonderful.
are. It's like, what is it, more than 15 years later now.
Then you were already living with your invisible, or probably even visible, condition by then.
Yes, so that's something. The first night we met, I told him, because quite honestly, because I thought, I actually like you, I don't want to get hurt. So in my best interest, I thought, well, if he's going to run away, I'll give him the chance. And so before the night finished, I said, look, I've got to tell you something. I have multiple sclerosis. And he said, everybody's got something. I thought, well, I like that answer. And so that was a plus. And he told me he has diabetes, and I don't know whether I've ever told him this, but I thought to myself, I'll swap you. Isn't that terrible? But I did. No condition is good. But at the time, I could end up disabled. So That's a
Well,
terrible thing to think, but I did.
yeah.
Fleetingly there. But anyway, a week later, husband to marry him, and so within 6 months of meeting, we were married, and here we are still.
So 15 years later, but you'd continued to research. You were getting really, really interested in being part of a study. You weren't suitable for a trial here. So you thought, I want to go to Russia. And that's when things really ramp up and the adversity becomes trauma, doesn't it? So I know that now we've got even more of a story to tell. And your husband, Kel, was a huge part of that. So we'll get him in at some point during our chat. But let's keep going to you were ready for your trip to Russia.
Well, yes, I mean, well, that was quite a process. And you have to get a visa and you have to book your flights and all that. And I'm smiling now. It's funny. It's a strange thing. Like after it all, I can smile. But it was dreadful at the time. I remember the tears just trying to get organised to book our flights. It became traumatic because the visa situation, we had a problem with the people that were advising us. They were advising us incorrectly. And it's like, well, hang on, I'm running out of time. You can only do it, I can't remember now, but it's like 2 months before or something like that. There's like, you can't even apply for your visa until a certain time. So it's like,
Okay.
oh, right, you've got to do it. And then it's kind of a rush. Well, maybe it's not a rush, but you certainly feel like I was in a panic. I want to do this. I've got to get there. I need this visa. So everything, if something goes wrong, there's major trauma, major trauma.
I would
So
imagine.
yeah, it was awful. But the tears, and then I'm asking for certain things and they're misunderstanding me and doing it wrong. But anyway, I should have gone through a different organisation. I know that now.
We live and learn. So tell
Yes.
me, if I would have seen you back then, what would I have noticed about you and the progression of the disease at that point?
That's the thing. And that is a huge thing. At that time, I had moved on. It's kind of a slow process. Like I was fine, honestly. When I met my husband in 2009, I was fine. So from 1998 to 2009, I was doing pretty good. We'd been married about 5 years when things started. Like I was working at a place that was about a 20-minute walk from the train station. I used to walk to the station close to home. I'd get the train and walk from there up to where I was working. And it was about a 20-minute walk getting to the station and going to where I worked. And I noticed once I sort of got to work, I have to sit down. And I was just getting tired. And then, so that was happening. And then it became like, I'd need to rest after about 15 minutes. And then after about 10 minutes. And then it got 5 minutes. And then eventually, so anyway, I had to stop work and everything. But by the time I got there, by the time I was heading to Russia, I was having trouble. Even if someone knocked at the door, it was like I went into this major panic. It's like, oh, I have to get up and get from the lounge to the door. And it was terrible. And then I'd get to that. All of this stuff, it's all memories and they come back. But you get to the door and there'd be somebody there and you'd say, oh, come in, because I couldn't stand up for too long. It's like, and they just want to chat. No, please come in, please. Hanging on a door frame. Yeah, it was really hard, really hard. So that's where I'd gotten to.
Okay.
Then I'd have days that were a bit better, and I had to plan everything I did, everything, like just the house. We're putting some laundry away. I think, well, I'll carry it to the lounge. I could get to the lounge, put it down, and leave it there. And later on, I'll take that to the bedroom. I sort of do half and half, all of that sort of stuff. And I bring out the vacuum cleaner. Well, that was horrendous. But, that was quite a process. I'd bring it out. It would sit around for a day, a good day or two. And then I'd think, I'll try to vacuum now. And I'll just do this room.
Yeah.
So I only had little bits of time. So it had really gotten difficult. Life was really difficult. And I hated going anywhere. It was awful, like family things. And we'd be invited, of course, different things. And of course I wanted to go, but it was just difficult. It was
A
just
lot
difficult.
of effort for everything by the sound of it. Was
Everything. And
exhausting.
I didn't want people to see either. So that's a horrible thing. But I didn't want
Mm,
to see,
yeah.
to know that I
Yeah.
had deteriorated so much. You know?
Okay. Yeah.
Mm. Anyway, and even silly thing, all these things. In photos, I would push the walker out the way if I had a stick, because I went from using a stick, and the stick would be put away, and I'm in the photo, all smiling, but the stick, you couldn't see that. But that's what I did. And I'm sure other people do it.
Oh, I would guarantee they do. Yeah, because
Mm,
it's very much in
confront.
your face then, and it's confronting, and it's then it's real, isn't it? And makes it real, and then there's so much
Mm.
attached to that from an adjustment point of view.
And when I talk about it now, I do it with respect, a lot of respect for all the people out there who are living with
Absolutely.
MS. You know, I just need to say that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Mm. I'll leave it
Mm.
there.
No, yeah, it's certainly been a very big journey. So then we get to the point where you finally got everything sorted and you're ready to go to Russia. And Kellen, you get ready to go on that venture.
Yes. So we have
So-
our flights booked and everything. And that was great. We go to the airport. We're a bit nervous and excited, nervous.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, I was glad, so glad that the time had come. And this was the day. Okay, we're really doing it. And off we go. And we got on the plane and we arrived in Moscow. And I think I saw something online and it was talking about a flight that had a terrorist. And I'm reading about it. Oh, that was our flight. It was the flight that we were on
Oh my
from
goodness.
Sydney to Moscow. Well, from Sydney to Abu Dhabi. Flights at Abu
Hmm.
Dhabi. Anyway, there were terrorists trying to board our flight.
Oh
And
my goodness.
luckily, customs had noticed or detected that their luggage was overweight. And it was overweight because they had explosives packed in a meat mincer in
Oh
their
my
luggage.
goodness.
Yes. So we were very, very fortunate that that was picked up, obviously.
Mm.
Yeah, the federal police were called in and those two terrorists were hauled off. So, but we might not have even made it. We might not be
No.
here to all because of that.
Oh
So that was
goodness.
the first thing, and we thought, well, thank goodness. And that's the bad luck out of it.
Yep.
Uh,
So you
yeah,
thought?
yeah. Well, that was kind of a comforting thing in a weird way. It was like, oh well, that's that. Good, and here we are. And then I had to go. You have to do all sorts of testing when you arrive, and so I'm in the hospital, and you have to be fit enough to undergo the chemotherapy, kind of a final thing, and before they'll treat you. And so I passed all that testing, and that was a big relief because,
Hmm.
well, gee, I hope they don't find something that I don't know about. And, you know,
Yeah.
so I was all good. And then I underwent the testing. And then you start the procedure, the chemotherapy. Which for me, I thought it was actually okay. I mean, I felt nauseous and things like that. There would be probably normal things that happen when you undergo chemotherapy, normal
Hmm.
reactions to that procedure. Yeah, a little bit unpleasant yeah, but I know I did quite well and I was feeling quite well. I was actually getting up. I felt like I was walking better, even
Mm,
quite
okay.
quickly. So that was strange, but because you get steroids at some part, and maybe it
Mm.
was the steroids
Yeah.
helping. And that's a thing too for me. Like I know a lot of other people, they want to know exactly how it works and what they're doing and all of the technical stuff. I wasn't so concerned about that. I was just like, this seems to work. Do what you gotta. Oh, you got to stick needles. You got to put chemotherapy here. I'm
Mm. So
here.
you
Just,
put your
I was
faith and trust in them that
absolutely,
it had worked for others and you were willing to take that chance.
yeah, like they know what they're doing. These guys are the experts. I don't know anything, and I would never even try to know. I mean, quite honestly, it's too much. It does my head in, quite
Yeah.
honestly. Reading all of that technical stuff, it's too
Mm-hmm.
much. So if they know what they're doing, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
And I was willing for them to do whatever they had to do. So I just went through it. So yeah, so I had the chemotherapy, and they take it when they say this, they do talk. It's a stem cell therapy. They call it probably hematopoietic stem cell therapy. The stem cells are your stem cells, so that's something that I guess people might be curious. They take your own stem cells, and they do that by way of apheresis or something. Anyway, it's similar to what they do for dialysis for people who
Okay.
have issues. Yeah. So it's similar to that, but what they're doing is taking your stem cells. And they take your stem cells, they put them on ice, and then you undergo the chemotherapy.
Back.
Yeah, the chemotherapy wipes out your immune system. That's the whole idea of it, because your immune system's attacking, you know. And so they get rid of it, give you your stem cells back, to help your immune system grow and rebuild itself. And so that's the idea of the procedure anyway. It gives you a new immune system which won't attack you.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the idea of it. And then because your immune system is not great, it's rebuilding, it's like a little baby. So they put you into isolation. This is in Russia, that's how they do it, where you're in a very protected, hygienic space, and everything was going great. I was fine. I was sending messages to my husband, and so I couldn't have any visitors or anything at that stage. So we were sort of in contact, and even with my children and friends, I was like, hi, here I am in Russia, and I'm doing great, and everything. And then all of a sudden, I woke up one morning, and I just didn't feel great. And I went to have a shower, and it was like, oh, it's too hard. So I didn't. I went back to bed, and I asked the nurse, you give me a bed bath. And she said, well, what's wrong? And that was it, really. Next thing, I had nurses coming from everywhere, taking my temperature. And then all I really remember is being wheeled off, and I think it was the doctor saying to me, we're taking you to intensive care. And I'm like, why? I just feel it off. It's really silly. But I just thought, give me a tablet or something, I'll be fine. And then the very last thing I remember about being wheeled off is was a male nurse, and he said to me, are you having trouble? And I remember thinking, oh, yeah.
Oh, so you're having trouble breathing. Oh, I forgot to think about that.
Yeah. And I just said, yeah. And it's kind of really weird because I knew I was having trouble breathing, but I hadn't really, I don't know. Unless he asked me, I wouldn't know. It's kind of weird. And that was it. That's where my husband comes into the story.
Yeah, then we know a lot more happened. So did you want to get Kel in now?
I do.
Okay, and now we're very fortunate to have Kel, Colleen's husband, come in and join us for the second part of the story, where we really will go through what happened and the significant trauma that they've faced to get to the point they are today. So welcome, Kel. I'll let you take over from here. So Colleen's been wheeled off to intensive care, not really aware of anything that's going on. What happened for you?
Well, I was living in a hotel called the Vega, and that's probably 20 to 30 minutes away from the hospital where Colleen was. And I received a call, and they basically summoned me to the hospital. So, yeah, I arrived at the hospital to see Colleen sort of like being rolled into the intensive care unit. And I was basically consoled by Dr. Fedorenko, who's the major doctor there. And he said, oh, she's going to be fine, she'll probably spend 3 to 5 days and she'll be up and about. And I said, well, what seems to be the problem? He said, oh, she's showing the early signs of pneumonia. And I thought, oh, well, that doesn't sound too good, because she's just
Mm.
been through a procedure where she's trying to recover from not having any stem cells. She didn't have an immune system. So therefore, I thought, well, she's going to have problems fighting this off.
Mm.
But he said, well, everything will be fine. We've got the best specialists here, which they did do. And so I was with her at the time. She was pretty lucid. And then probably 2 days after that, I could see that she was declining and that she was getting worse. And about 2 days after that, I arrived at the hospital, and I could see that she was just totally out of it. And basically, a couple of alarms went off, and I was sort of ushered, or, told to leave the intensive care unit. I was like, this can't be good. So I stood at the door and watched. And as I was watching, I saw him rolling the defibrillator, and I thought, well,
Oh,
this
dear.
isn't good at all. So I sort of left when they were attaching everything to her. And yeah, I was probably outside for about 45 minutes, something like that, when basically one of the doctors came out. It wasn't Dr. Fedorenko. And over there, a lot of even the doctors, a lot of them speak broken English, like not full on English. So they're a bit hard to understand. Yeah. So anyway, she ended up in the intensive care unit, and then she ended up on drips, monitors, intravenous feeds. She was just wired up, and I was like, this is a worry. So I was sort of like, it's like a bedside vigil then.
Yep.
And my visa was running out, and so was Colleen's. I was staying at the Vega, like we had a visa for 30 days. And yeah, so our time was running out, and she was in the care unit, I think something like 18 days.
Oh, my
The
goodness.
bedside vigil, and, it was pretty horrific what I was witnessing, but I was there early hours of the morning till late at night, holding her hand. She wasn't conscious at all, and she had a tracheotomy, so she had that in her throat to breathe. And I spent my days basically stressed, but tried to console Colleen, talk to her. I was just hopeful that she knew I was there, hold her hand, even sing karaoke to her from the computer. So we
Oh,
were there.
gosh. That's dedication.
Well, that was ironic, because even the nurses joined in. So a few of them knew Elvis and things like that. So they were very caring people. So, they joined in the karaoke and that type of thing. But Colleen spent 18 days in the intensive care unit. But during that time, our visas had run out. There was an Irishman there, and his wife was undergoing the same procedure. And he heard that I was having a few problems, and he said, book a hotel under my name and we'll use our visas. I said, okay, I'll put it on my card. And he said, no, I'll put it on my card. So, this person that I'd only met over there was offering to do this for me. He said, if you put on your card, the authorities will know. And they're very strict over there on their laws.
They certainly are.
Yeah. So anyway, the time came where our visas ran out, and the good doctor said to me, maybe you should return to Australia. I said, look, I can't do that. I said, my wife's in intensive care. I said, I know that she's got a 5% chance of survival. I said, I'm not going. And then he deliberated with the hospital, and the hospital said, well, basically, he can move in here. So I lived under their shelter in one of their rooms. Well, firstly, it was Colleen's room. She didn't know I was living there because she was out of it, of course. And then when she came back into a room, when she was after 18 days in the ICU, they moved me into another room. She didn't even know I was in the room either. Because she's going, what about our visas? I didn't want to worry her. She was writing things down because she couldn't talk at all. Even after coming out of the intensive care unit, we were communicating through writing. So I knew that there could be problems, but I was more worried about Colleen. I wasn't worried about me. So I was living in the hospital. In the end, Colleen knew that I was living there. I'd just get up in the morning and go and have breakfast with her, leave her room at midnight when she'd gone to sleep, then get up again the same day and repeat the same procedure. After a while, we'd go on a physio together. I was given a wedgies her up like, oh, why do I have to do all this? Because she was exhausted, and I understood. But I said, because if you don't, we might as well take our citizenship. You need to work hard now. And I said, I'm sorry, but she didn't really understand. She was very vague. And yeah, so anyway, we spent that time there, and yeah, we did a lot of things together. We were there for nearly 3 months, but as time went by, she sort of got a bit of strength back. Her arms got strength back. She couldn't really sit up. She was still being assisted with the breathing. And the doctor said, well, you know what, she can probably leave soon. Okay, so then I had to communicate with the travel agency through our daughter, Emily. She was a travel agent. She was basically talking to them and deferring our flights and doing all this stuff for us. It was amazing. And then we actually came time to leave, but I couldn't leave because our visas had expired, so we didn't have visas to leave. So then I had to throw my hands up and say, well, here I am. And I was driven to a police station somewhere in the proximity of Moscow by one of the employees of the hospital. His name was Alexei, and there was a Dr. Alexei there as well. So Colleen and I thought, well, I'm going to be driven to the police station by Alexei, who's the doctor there. That'll be good, you know. So I meet this guy at 6 o'clock in the morning in the foyer of the hospital, and I said, mate, you're not Alexei. And he's gone, yeah, my name's Alexei. Well, Alexei's like John. Every second person's name is Alexei. So off I go to the courts, and I get charged to the police station, basically arrested, fingerprint and photograph and all that type of thing. And then I'm sort of conveyed to the court. I'm sitting outside the court, and that was a bit traumatic because I'd never been in a Russian court, although I've been in other courts, not a Russian court, and everyone's speaking Russian, no one's speaking English. I've got an interpreter who I had trouble understanding, a translator. I'm there the whole day, and I'm thinking, we're not going to get hurt because it's nearly 5 o'clock. And I said to this Alexei, I said, you know what? I said, I don't think we're going to get in today. So I'm going to end up in the gulag for the weekend because it was Friday. And I'll be here waiting to appear before a judge. But anyway, he said, well, the court's closed here like 7, 8 o'clock at night. I said, well, he said, we'll get in. I'm like, okay. So eventually we did. But in the meantime, Colleen's worried. She's in the hospital. She's not well. She's traumatized already. It's a breakdown where we basically were like cats on a hot tin roof. Anything can trigger us. Me going, and then Dr. Alexei walks into Colleen's room while I'm at the court, and she was thinking that Dr. Alexei is with me.
Oh, okay.
The driver, Alexei. So she's freaked out and broken down.
Absolutely broken
She's in tears. And he's like, oh, he didn't know what to do. Had to call the administration lady, Anastasia. She's lovely, to console Colleen. And then I end up coming back at 8:30 at night, and we got our orders to leave Russia, but we were fine. We were given 10 days to leave, and we were banned from returning to Russia for 5 years.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so the laws are pretty strict over there. There wasn't too much compassion given to our plight. The doctor had to write a report on Colleen's condition. So then, to cut a long story short, Colleen had gotten to the stage where she could fly. I got a medical clearance from Etihad.
Okay.
So we went to board a flight at one of the airports near Moscow. So we're driven to the airport. We go to get on this flight. Colleen's let through immigration and customs straight away.
I didn't mention that the reason I needed the clearance was because I needed oxygen on the flight.
Yeah, she needed oxygen.
So another complicating factor that you're dealing with on top of the trauma of being arrested.
Yeah. So I got to the gates, and they actually held me up for like 20 minutes, half an hour. And I'm like, I've got an order from your court. My visa's expired, but here's a court order, blah, blah, blah. And then she had to go and see somebody else. And I'm like, oh, no, Colleen's on the other side of the barrier in a wheelchair. I'm like, how are you going on? So eventually we got through. we boarded the flight. Everything was fine. And like, yay, when we flew out of Moscow, you
Yes.
beauty, we're in the air, we're on the way. Anyway, we got to Abu Dhabi and we had business class seats, so we had enough room and all the rest of it. So anyway, we get to Abu Dhabi, we go into the business lounge. I sort of help Colleen, and she needed assistance to have things changed and do that. So I wheeled her into the disabled, toilets and did things in there to make sure that she was okay. Went to board this flight. The attendant came up because we had wheelchair assistance. The attendant came up from Etihad Airways and wheeled Colleen down to the boarding gate. And then we were sort of like third in line, and the guy that was in control there, he said, go and stand over there. And I'm like, what do you mean stand over there? He said, no, go and stand over there. He didn't give us a reason. I'm like standing there watching all these people go through. And I'm like, what's going on? So we got to the last half a dozen people. I went back and I said, look, what's going on? Because we should be boarding this flight. Just spent 3 months in Russia through an ordeal, and you're not letting us board this flight. I'm thinking, oh, what else can go wrong? Anyway, he said, oh, your wife needed oxygen. I said, yes, I've got a medical certificate requesting oxygen and it's been okayed by your airline. I suggest you get a supervisor here, because at that stage I was that irate, but I was taking deep breaths, trying to control myself. Anyway, he came back with the supervisor, and the supervisor basically, I gave him the certificate, gave him a big folder that I compiled. And Colleen's sitting there, poor, and she's not in a good state.
Oh, I can imagine.
And he basically spoke to this guy and said, get them on board and get them on board now. Well, we got on board that flight, and when we took off, they couldn't do enough for us. And there were all I could see was backsides, because all these attendants were, I was like 1 aisle away from Colleen. There was a gap there opposite. And like all these stewardesses were all over. Oh, what can we do for you?
Royal
Can we
treatment.
help you now? Yeah. So anyway, needless to say, she was on oxygen all the way back, but they had a camera on the top of the plane. It was one of those flights where you could see over the top of the plane.
Yeah.
And I didn't really sleep on the way over there, maybe 1 hour and 15 hours. But on the way back, when we got on the connecting flight from Abu Dhabi to Sydney, I crashed for 6 hours. And I woke up and I woke up to see the Harbour Bridge. I was just cheering because we were circling ready to land, and it was just amazing. And by the time we landed, it was such a relief. We got assistance off the aircraft, and we'd actually arranged for a hire car to pick us up in Sydney and drive us to the airport. They were waiting for us when we returned and they knew the story because we kept deferring the hire car date because it'd be 2 months earlier. And anyway, we went down in like a Ford or something like that, sedan. And when we got to the airport, Colleen's daughters were there, my daughters, and they're all waiting there and like, yay, But when we walked outside, the hire car supplied a stretch limo. So he's this limousine, and the guy knew our story, and he said, where do you want to go? I said, we've got to go directly to the hospital. Colleen had to go, be admitted. So he drove us directly to Gosford Hospital. He was in communication with the owner of the hire car company. He'd gone to emergency in Gosford Hospital, spoken to triage. She had a wheelchair ready to go. When we got there, she was waiting there with the wheelchair.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah, it was just, I mean, the hospital and what the specialists did with Colleen in Russia was amazing, because she had a 5% chance of survival. It was a training hospital, so they had all the best specialists there training their interns. So she had the best care, and even Colleen's hematologist said after a couple of visits, here in Australia, said, I've read the report in detail, and if you were anywhere other than where you were, you wouldn't have got the care that you did, and you wouldn't be sitting with us here today.
Wow. So when you heard that,
yeah,
what went through your minds?
Well, I knew that. I thought, because I knew she only had a 5% chance of survival. But when we first went there, she sort of briefly went through the report, and she didn't really say anything. But it was only when she went through it in detail that she realised the amount of effort that went into it. I mean, we brought drugs and things back, boxes of it from Russia that just you're not allowed to have in Australia because they haven't been trialled here, but they've been tested in Russia, and they're these miracle cures. And yeah, it was just amazing. So it was good that she acknowledged that, because she could then pass it on. It was like Colleen's hematologist here. He said, I'm a bit skeptical about you going before we left. He said, but I really want to monitor how you are and what you're like when you get back. Well, she basically hobbled in for the last appointment that we had prior to leaving. And then she just walked in unassisted when we got back. And he was like,
goodness.
oh my God. Like, he was like, Colleen will tell you her score as far as her disability went, but she was far improved. Yeah, he was just amazed by it. And now he heard our story, and he was like, he told a number of people about what happened over there.
I bet.
It's one of his favourite stories. But yeah.
I mean, there's so many layers, aren't there, to what you've been through, like the medical journey itself, which has ended up, you know, miraculously improving things for you, but to also have to deal with the trauma of turning yourself in, being arrested, facing court in a foreign country where English is not really spoken, very intermittently and broken only. Frightening.
Yeah, it was, but I'm an ex-federal policeman, so I wasn't real worried about the court system.
Yeah.
But I was more worried about the broken English and me not being understood and me not understanding them.
Yes.
Because basically I was told that they just checked my passport because the hospital supplied these reports, that there was not going to be any real questioning. But when I got there, that wasn't totally true. It was like, why did you come here? When did you come here? What was your reasons? Do you know the laws of Russia? Do you know that you've broken the law of Russia? Blah, blah, blah. So they cross-examined me and put me through all that with a judge that I couldn't understand. That I was speaking through a broken translator, broken English. So yeah, that was
very confronting.
Yeah, but I was reasonably relaxed prior to going in. I was more worried about Colleen, and Anastasia had rang me and said Colleen had broken down. And I think she got me to talk on the phone to you.
I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure
Isn't
she
that
did.
terrible?
Yeah, she got me to talk on the phone and consult Colleen, tell her that I'm okay, everything's all right. She was lovely, and she tried to help me out. She went to all her government agencies and everything else, tried to represent me prior to me handing myself in, trying to get a clearance, extending the visa, which just wasn't going to happen. Their laws are very absolute. But I was more worried about Colleen the whole time, and there were times there, one time there when I just said to her, you're coming home with me and you're going to be sitting beside me, even though she probably couldn't hear me.
So let's go to, you came back here and then you started obviously recovering and settling back into it. So if you have a look now, Colleen, just share for our listeners where you are now as a result of your treatment and everything, that risk that you took on yourself and their advanced medicine. Where are you now compared to where you were before?
Well, I'm in a much better place, health-wise and ability-wise. And I will just, for anyone who understands that if you've got MS, you get this score, a disability score, from 1 to 10. And so 1 is the lowest and 10 is not good at all. I was a 6.5. Now, 7 is wheelchair. So that's how close I was to wheelchair, full-time wheelchair. And I'm now a 3. So, like, I'm not cured. I still have issues, but I'm much better than I was. And had I stayed here and not done anything, who knows? I honestly think I'd be bedridden today. I really do. That's what I felt, because I was just worse every day. Anyway, I won't go there. But that's how I felt at the time. It's like, because I remember we had a wheelchair in the garage. Well, it used to be my mother's, but it was kind of given to me because, hey, I'm probably going to need it. And yeah, and it's good that wheelchair's not there anymore. It's gone, you know. So my life is totally different, and I'm still improving. Like, it's kind of crazy. It's been how long now? What is it? 7, nearly 8 years. It'll be 8 years this year.
Just about.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and I still feel like I'm improving. Just little things. I go, oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's better. I'm doing that better, or I'm walking for longer. And it's just, but I can do what a normal person does, pretty much. There's still things, I suppose. I have problems with balance. That's my main issue today, is balance. So, like, I still don't like stairs very much. And
Uneven ground.
just uneven ground, although I'm better with that now. Just everything's better. I'm better. I'm not cured. I'm a lot better, you know.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? That, as you said, and as you alluded to at the very beginning, there is no cure, but we can continue to be hopeful that they come up with other approaches, and that other people who are going through what you have been through don't have to go all the way to Russia to have that experience.
Very expensive too.
Yeah.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Anyway.
Especially having to spend so long away from
home. It was worth it.
No,
and the good thing, credit to the hospital, I thought, you know what, we're going to have to sell this house when we get back to pay for all this. But they wore that cost.
They wore it.
All the procedure that Colleen went through, the extended.
Supporting you at the court.
Yep.
Translator.
Supporting me at the court, translator, all those things was at the expense of the hospital.
Oh my goodness.
So
that's amazing. What a gift.
Yeah. And supplied us all the drugs afterwards, and
yeah,
supplied me with my diabetic medication while I was there.
Wow.
So, you know, we kiss the ground to them beautiful people.
Yes, absolutely. And to help you, but then to also safeguard you while you were both over there, to look after you and get you back here.
That's right. You've got to see us safely. I mean, the doctor had tears in his eyes the day we left. Like, it's an angel. He really is an angel on this earth.
Very much a humanitarian, and a lot of people have got these dark thoughts about Russia, but in every country you have good and not so good people.
Human beings and beautiful people.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
So if you look back now, would you say, and you might both answer it because you've both had significant trauma related to this from different perspectives, would you say there's any specific qualities or personal attributes that are key for helping people move through trauma?
I think support more than anything else. And we had great support from family, friends, and everybody in the hospital in Russia. We saw, so because the procedure should only take 30 days, you can imagine how many groups of people that I can remember that went through. Colleen was probably not in the state to remember. But I met people from all over the world, and they'd all heard about it. They were looking forward to a run, like an update every day on what was happening with Colleen. And it was like, pleasant thoughts go with you. And just the overwhelming support that we had, people in the hospital, people out in the HSCT or MS community that were part of that group, like MS for Russia, everybody, hundreds of people. You know, it's the support that gets you through.
So building your own supportive community.
Yeah. The beauty of that, though, that kind of hits you. Like, you realise how many good, beautiful people there are that are absolutely caring for you, and you feel it. And alongside that, for me afterwards, was like a faith.
Yeah.
You know, a faith. I mean, if I had never believed, because I know all of those prayers were going up for me. If I didn't believe before, I believe now. Because I didn't get better for no reason. I mean, yes, the doctors and that, of course, we needed their knowledge and experience. But all those prayers that went up as well, they had to have helped. I just think they had to.
It was
have,
all the
you know,
positive thoughts.
all the positive.
Yeah, we call them our MS family, and there's hundreds of them. In fact, one guy that I met in Russia, he's JP. He's from America. He's ex-military, and I'm ex. So we're both ex-services.
Yeah.
He's coming to stay with us in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah, he's
So
coming to
again, it
Australia.
shows
Yeah.
the power of community, the
Yeah.
power of relationships,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
that faith, that belief in something outside ourselves, which is
Yeah.
what we
Yes.
know from a lot of the research and what I'm hearing over and over again when I'm interviewing guests on our podcast is that belief in something outside ourselves and that faith, whether it's in a religion or whether it's in something, who knows what it is, and everyone will have their own faith. But I think
Yes.
you've absolutely nailed it. Support, community, and faith.
Yes,
For
absolutely.
So
sure.
thank you.
Family.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
yes, family for sure. And I think the other thing that I do want to highlight, I know that you run your own podcast, Colleen. So if you could share where people can find that, because I know that I have a few friends that have MS and I know they will definitely be looking for this. And there'll be other people that are in our wider community that know someone with MS. So
Okay, thank you very much.
what's your podcast called?
It's MSMS, The Many Stories of Multiple Sclerosis. So,
Excellent. So MSMS, The Many Stories of Multiple Sclerosis. And I'll put the link in the show notes. And yeah, I know that you definitely have a lot more still left to do, and you are paying it forward so beautifully with the MS community. And I think the work that you're doing is amazing, and I'm so excited that you're going to live a very different life to the one that you may have lived had you not backed
Yes.
yourself.
yeah, it's the gratitude. That's the thing, like for me too. It's just the gratitude. And because I'm still in that community, of course, the MS
Of course.
community. And like I know there's a need there, a need for community itself and connection, and for people to know that they're not alone, because it can be very isolating, and because you do become disabled in most, well, I won't say most, but in a lot of cases, when it's so different for everybody. That's the disease itself, but you
Yeah.
can live quite well with it, and some go downhill quite quickly with it as well. So yeah, there's all of that.
Oh, you've shared so much, really, to have so vulnerably and openly both shared your experience, as confronting as it was. And yeah, I'm very grateful, and I feel blessed and honoured that you were kind enough to share that, because I think that there's so much that we can learn.
Yeah, there's a lot, isn't it? There's so much in it. And when we came back, it was difficult. I mean, at the time, I think,
Yeah. Well,
like just
Colleen
settling
spent
back.
yeah, and she spent another month in hospital.
Another month once you got home.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. 4 months in total, something like that. It's supposed to be a 30-day procedure.
That was hard,
But
coming home.
yeah, that was hard
But
because
not
Colleen
coming
couldn't come home.
Yeah.
After spent 2 weeks in Gosford Hospital, 2 weeks in rehabilitation. But I walked into a room in Gosford Hospital one day, and she said, "What's this?" Got up with a walker and started walking around the room, and I'm like, "How long's this been going on?" I was just elated. It was like, "Now do it again." So I filmed it twice.
Oh, fantastic.
That was
Just spontaneous. Yeah, just something that happened that
just
day.
that morning. I thought I could.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to try this. And I did it. And so I went, okay, yeah, because she wanted to help me. I went, no.
Independence and that grit and determination shone
Yeah.
through from the very beginning.
Yes.
Didn't it? Right through. That's the thread that's been very common through your story, that you never gave up. You didn't accept that what people suggested. Remember back at the beginning, you go and choose which of these medications, and you decided, no, you didn't want to just accept that. So that has continued, hasn't it?
and no more MS medication at all.
No, nothing now.
None.
So that's,
No,
nothing.
no. She was on different drugs the whole time.
Wow.
Before we went, she was like a guinea pig on some of the drugs.
Yeah, I was in trials.
Tests, trials.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I tried everything.
Yeah, tried everything.
That's amazing. And you made that very clear that this is your story. It's not necessarily what would happen for other people.
No.
Well, there was the chances of what happened to Colleen. It's got the best safety record of all the clinics that treat MS in Russia, and it's a 0.02 death rate. You got more chance of dying from influenza in this country than what you had going through the procedure in Russia. So that's putting it in context. We were just the unlucky ones that went through that, but lucky that we did get through it, and lucky that Colleen's improved and recovered from it all.
But I was willing to take the chance. I think that's the thing, though. I was facing a life I did not want, and I didn't. There's so much around it. There's so much around it that you think about, and really difficult decision. It was a difficult decision, but I knew the risks. I knew the risk. I knew it was a possibility, but you never think it's going to happen to you. So that's another message. It can. It can.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to do anything to make it happen. It can just happen.
So was it all worthwhile? Yes.
Yeah.
It was.
Yes. And I think that's the clear message, and you've summed it up beautifully, Colleen, that you were really willing to not accept a life that you didn't want and to do something about it as much as you could. You couldn't control the outcome, but you didn't want to accept that was how life could end up for you.
And can I say too that I was accepting when it went bad? I think I was. I remember having the thoughts. So not nice to remember, but I remember I was making plans. We were flying on the plane back home. I was planning to tell Kel, he can divorce. I said, just divorce me, it's fine. He's like, put me in a home. As long as someone's looking after me, feeding me and stuff, I'll be fine. Don't worry about me.
You're having that thought after going through all that.
Yeah.
but I thought, what were you bringing home? I thought, no.
Yeah, so all those things, of course, crossed your mind. And I'm grateful that you have shared that, because I think people need to know that this is the reality. Those thoughts are normal thoughts to have, and we need to talk about it and not keep those things quiet.
No, but I was I took the chance. I never sort of put it on anybody. It was my choice to do it. I knew there was a risk. I didn't think it was anything bad was going to happen, but it did. But there are, so that's it. And so now I just got to deal with that. And I did think, oh well, here I am. It's not. Of course, it wasn't what I wanted. Didn't want that at all.
No.
So I've been blessed. I do think I've been blessed to be where I am today. I'm blessed to have this man. Who went through it all and stood by me, and he's still here, and he doesn't mind when I spend hours doing a podcast.
Absolutely. So luckily that ad came up on the TV multiple times, and you took that chance on him.
That's right.
Even if you thought he was fibbing about everything.
I did.
And look, it was all true, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for coming on today. I'm really, really grateful that we've had the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me in this episode of Growing Tall Poppies. It is my deepest hope that today's episode may have inspired and empowered you to step fully into your post-traumatic growth, so that you can have absolute clarity around who you are, what matters the most to you, and to assist you to release your negative emotions and regulate your nervous system so you can fully thrive. New episodes are published every Tuesday, and I hope you'll continue to join us as we explore both the strategies and the personal qualities required to fully live a life of post-traumatic growth and to thrive. So if it feels aligned to you and really resonates, then I invite you to hit subscribe, and it would mean the world to us if you could share this episode with others who you feel may benefit too. You may also find me on Instagram at Growing Tall Poppies and Facebook, Dr. Natalie Green. Remember, every moment is an opportunity to look for the lessons and to learn and increase your ability to live the life you desire and deserve. So for now, stay connected, stay inspired, stand tall like the tall poppy you are, and keep shining your light brightly in the world. Bye for now.